In my 31 years in the industry, I've always worked in supporting sales with strategic, consultative, data approaches and helping clients grow and achieve their goals. And since I've been working in the local market space over the last 7 to 8 years, it's really been great for me because I've had that opportunity to develop relationships, not just with my sales teams internally for the company that I work for, but in developing trusted relationships with clients. And that's what this is all about. It's all about strategies and a consultative approach and forming a partnership that will yield success for you guys. And in a world that's constantly changing, well, there are a lot of challenges and there's a lot of confusion out there. So what I'm hoping, the idea of putting these educational events together for our clients is to educate them on some truths, not assumptions, because as we all know, why don't we assume? Remember growing up, we used to break down that word, and that's why we don't assume, right? We really need to look at data and the importance of data. And so during this hour-long presentation, I'm going to take you through the media landscape of today. And I use many different currencies. It's not a one source. It's not a one-stop shop. It really is taking the top, research companies and data companies that are involved in the media landscape and kind of show you how people, not only what devices they own, but how much time they spend engaging with that media. There are a lot of choices as consumers that we have thanks to technology. How do we engage it? How much time do we spend? And then we'll pause for some Q&A at the end of the first period. For those that know me, I'm a huge hockey fan, so everything I try to do is equate it to sports and especially in hockey. So we broke this down into kind of 3 periods of excited information. The second period will start with some marketing strategies for you guys, the business decision makers. Some basic principles: the more things change, the more they stay the same, but looking at some of the strategies and then looking at some industry-wide case studies, some big players, some smaller players, but really to introduce you into how these strategies for business decision makers are, being executed in this world of, technology and change and fragmentation. And then, of course, where the industry is going as we ramp it up to the third period, the most exciting period of hockey, the end of the game. We're going to talk a little bit about where the industry is going and focusing on this audience-based buying concept. And then, of course, how we're here to help you with some of those challenges and truly being a consultative partner to help you guys grow. And you'll kind of see how this all comes into play, because again, the goal of this is not just to get you on this presentation and have the AEs close business. What we do is we want to start a relationship with you guys and walk you through, and hopefully this is just, an initial first date, and we're going to really get to know each other over time after that. And then we'll wrap it up with a final Q&A. So everything that I do is based on data. It's all about the importance of data. And I always like to go to our historians, right? Because why do we have history? Well, it helps us to learn. It's a recording of events on paper or on the internet that we can read and learn from. And one of my favorite historians, if you will, that works in data is this gentleman. But it's really not important about who he is. Sure, he was an engineer, a statistician, most famous for rebuilding Japan after World War II with his consultative business approach as a management consultant. But he's famous for this quote, and I think it's really important, especially in this day and age of fragmentation. And it's, without data, you're really just another person with an opinion. Data is what points us in the right direction. And how much data you gather to really point you in the right direction is key, right? You don't want to only go with one data point or one opinion, right? We want to make sure we're properly planning and consulting and doing things to move forward. And really, that is the importance of data, especially in a media landscape where back in the day, you had maybe a couple of newspapers, 7 TV networks to watch, a couple of radio stations. Well, look what technology has done to the media landscape. It's exploded. We have so many different devices to engage with content that we all love and enjoy. And of course, prime time has become my time. We don't have to schedule our lives around running to watch a specific program because there are so many different ways to access that program or that content on demand and through a multitude of devices. Heck, even devices that were built to tell time can now connect us to the internet, have us communicate in texts, access, things online. And that's what technology breeds. And it's really changed the way we consume media. And it's kind of thrown this whole industry into a little bit of a tailspin because there is so much fragmentation out there. How do I know what's going on? Well, again, that's where data points you in the right direction. So what I'd like to start off with is, what type of devices do we own as consumers in this country? And you can see here, this is the latest data. This was released in June of 2021. It's called the Nielsen Total Audience Report. And it shows you the different devices and services that we own in the country today. And you can see year over year, we always want to keep our eyes on the growth factors, right? Yes, DVRs, they're diminishing, right? 52% penetration a year ago, down to 45%. Why is that? Well, because technology is taking over. Internet connected devices have grown to nearly 50% penetration. You know, a device that connects us to the internet. Smart enabled TVs, where we can now stream content through the internet. That's almost up to 60% penetration. Of course, you know, subscribing to video on demand or streaming content, things like Netflix or Pluto, Tubi, downloading apps, you know, that's over 77% penetration in this country today. And then, of course, you know, making our traditional media elements like a traditional television set to be able to connect to the internet by plugging some device into it, that's up to almost 80%. So you could see the trends that are occurring thanks to technology and granting consumers many different ways to engage with the content that we love. And then, of course, it's not just about owning it, it's how we engage with it. So from a subscription standpoint, we can see here, you know, there are definitely trends that we need to keep our eyes on. Traditional cable is decreasing year over year. You can see national cable penetration is at about 63.8% as of the most recent penetration data, down from 68%, 68.5% a year ago. So where are those people going to? Well, we could see clearly by the data, they're migrating towards what is called a virtual MVPD, which is your Hulu Live, Pluto, Sling TV, different ways to, you know, get your content on television outside of a cable subscription. There's also growth in broadband only, or what we call the cord cutters, that don't subscribe to a traditional pay TV service anymore, but they access all of their content through the internet. And you can see that's growing year over year from, you know, 10.7% to almost 13%. And that number is going to continue to accelerate. Of course, I know a large majority of the attendees in this presentation is from the East and the New York market. So I did add an element. Things are different here in New York. And you can see compared to national, where cable penetration is at 63%, here in the New York tri-state area, cable penetration is still very strong. It's at 83.8 or rounding up to 84%. So there still are a lot of households that do subscribe to cable, but there are changes. We are seeing a growth in broadband only internet connectivity. And again, we will make sure we continue to keep our eye on these trends, because it is all about following audiences, but not just from an ownership standpoint, but what about an engagement standpoint? Yes, we own these things and we subscribe to these things, but it doesn't necessarily mean we use them. So let's take a deeper dive in that. So you can see here the latest data from that same report that Nielsen generated in June of 2021. It reports on the most recent data they gather from fourth quarter 2020 on weekly reach and amount of time spent with the various media that's out there. So you could see traditional radio still is the largest reach vehicle out there. You can reach 88% of adults 18 plus that listen to the radio week in and week out, followed by app or web usage on our smartphones, right? We love our smartphones, right? We arrange our lives around our television sets, our living rooms around our television sets, but we really do arrange our lives around our mobile devices. And as a matter of fact, we engage in both of those activities simultaneously. And then, of course, in third place, still great, over 80% reach, is live traditional television. But we want to keep our eye on the growth factor, and that is our television connected devices. That has grown to 57%, and that keeps increasing every quarter. So it is important because it is still ways that consumers engage in content that they love, which is television. It's just a different way to access that content. And then, of course, you have your internet on a computer and then app or web usage on a tablet. But as we all know, reaching somebody one time is not enough. You also need frequency, right? The amount of time people spend on average engaged with these platforms. And you could see here, there's definitely a big difference between the different media. Yes, you'll reach 88% of consumers a week on radio, and they spend about 12 hours a week listening to the radio. But look at how much time people still spend watching television. Still a very significant reach with 81% traditional and an additional 57% on TV connected devices. But that accounts for over 45 hours a week engaged in front of a television screen. And then when you factor in other screens like our smartphones, our computers, and our tablets, well, that adds up to nearly another 40 hours a week. So when you compare, listening to a radio to actual screen time, you're almost looking at a, 7-to-1 ratio of frequency in terms of time spent, where you've got people spending nearly 85 hours a week in front of a screen. And of course, we love media. We are definitely addicted to media. As a matter of fact, according to the latest data, we're spending over 10 hours and 20 minutes a day connected to media. That's a huge amount of our time. And then, of course, television, smartphones, and radio are the top 3 devices that we're spending time. But not just spending time connected to media, but we love video. We're spending an average of 5 hours and 42 minutes a day consuming video of that 10 hours and 21 minutes connected to media. And nearly 90% of that video time spent is still on a television screen. But thanks to technology, what's changing is the way people get television. And this has kind of always been the case since television was born back in the 1930s. It's always gone through an evolution. I know I lived through the cable revolution or evolution, if you will. Back in the early 90s when cable started growing and growing subscribers and the networks kept growing and ad-supported entered. But what it did was it fragmented broadcast viewing. It didn't eliminate it. It just gave consumers more options. And as we enter into this third evolution or revolution, whatever you want to call it, of streaming television and on demand and connected to the internet, well, it's really something that's always been happening and it's going to continue to happen. And why try to assume, right? We want to look at the trends to truly identify where these audiences are going. And it's really not about cord cutting, as you saw on that last slide, right? It is important to know what devices we own and what's connected to our households through our, broadband subscription service. But taking a deeper look, you'll see it's not cord cutting, it's cord stacking. Yes, people still spend a lot of time watching television traditionally. This is at 62%, which is almost exactly the same. This was a study that was done by MRI JFK, almost clearly mirrors what the Nielsen data shows at 63% of traditional, pay television subscription. People still subscribe, but they also do a multitude of other things. 70% of those households stream. And yes, an additional 4% plus or minus 5% statistical reliability on the other data sets, but people are trying new things. And you'll see here from the latest data, actually, I just took this from TiVo, released a video trends report just last week, and it reports data from second quarter of 2021. And you can see the growth of subscription services that we as respondents or subscribers actually have access to. We have access to or subscribe to 9 different services, up from just 4 5 years ago. And this trend is going to continue. And then, of course, different generations behave differently, right? Yes, younger audiences, they really are savvy and engage in a multitude of different services. According to this TiVo study, respondents aged 18 to 30 use an average of over 11 different video services to engage with content that they love. And of course, it's not just the younger generation. The older generation has embraced this new trend and this new way to consume television as well. As the 51 and older age group, they subscribe to around 5 different video services. So again, things are constantly evolving thanks to technology. And of course, as content providers keep packaging the content that they know consumers love into these different types of streaming packages and subscription services. And that's why it's important to keep an eye on the trends. So a little bit of an eye chart here. But what I want to show you in the importance of this chart is the 6-month trend on how fast things are changing. So in this red box here on the left, you could see in November of 2020, the big five in this connected TV OTT streaming landscape, right? Amazon, Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, and YouTube. Well, they commanded about 75% of the share of streaming activity in the market. But fast forward just 6 months to May of 2021, and look what happened to the share of that big five. It dropped down to about 70%. And the other bucket increased from 25 to 30%. Well, why is that? Well, simply it's an evolution. As more and more content providers are providing options for consumers, people are switching. They're trying things out. And when their subscription or their promotion ends, they're trying different things. So here's a source from a company called Real Good that basically analyzed over 2 million of their streamers, and they saw a very distinct pattern or trend from second quarter of last year to third quarter of last year. And what happened is, as other entries, keep coming in or being launched, like Disney Plus and HBO Max, well, what it does is it gives consumers an option to watch something else, and it fragments viewership. Netflix went from a 32% share of the market down to 25%. And Hulu went from 19 to 15%. And these trends are consistent. So this was a study that was just released by Freewheel, which is owned by Comcast. And they're a video service streaming platform. And their trends are very close to what we've seen from the 2 million users on Real Good. There's definitely a shift in viewing behavior, and fragmentation is a big part of that. Netflix went from 37% share of voice in second quarter 2020 down to about 29% in second quarter 2021. And Hulu has dropped as well. Well, the reason being, different programs are being launched and different platforms are being launched, like Discovery Plus, like Peacock. And as a result of that, we're seeing churn. Subscription OTT services churned at 20% in the back half of 2020. It's not a bad thing. It's just a reality because consumers have the freedom to choose and try different things. Of course, definitely after the post-lockdown hangover, well, the streaming subscriptions are suffering a hangover from that because of a variety of factors, whether it's economics or financial situations, or again, having ease to less expensive options. And as we're seeing in a lot of different studies, and maybe this will be a part of the next Lunch and Learn, learning lounges, is consumers don't mind commercials if they get access content for free. And what I found to be really interesting from that video trends report that TiVo released is they said that subscription VOD churn is actually double that of pay TV. And that just goes to show you how fast and furious things are changing. So why is all of this change or churn occurring? Well, because people are trying new things, and that's what the data tells us. Viewership of ad-supported streaming video services saw an increase of over 70% year over year. And the two biggest drivers of that are these VMVP aggregators of popular content. Companies like Pluto, which is owned by Viacom CBS, they have over 250 channels of great content, whether it's classic sitcoms, live news, live sports, engaging entertainment program that we're used to seeing as traditional cable subscribers. But now we have the ability to download this app. And yes, we still are exposed to ads while we're doing these things. But the fact of the matter is as a consumer, we don't mind it. And Pluto has just eclipsed, as a matter of fact, $1 billion in ad revenue. And that ad revenue is tied directly towards user activity. The more people that are engaged on this platform, the more of an opportunity you can hit them with advertisements. That's why their ad revenue is growing. And Tubi is following the same suit because they're owned by Fox. It's their owned and operated free streaming service. And Fox just announced that they wrapped up their strong upfront with ad dollars flowing to Tubi, and they are very closely on the heels of being a billion-dollar ad business as well. And there are many other ad-supported streaming services that are following that same model, whether it's Discovery, taking their family of networks and creating an app called Discovery Plus. NBC owned and operated now has Peacock. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. The only way I could watch that game this weekend is if I downloaded that Peacock app and streamed that college football event on my phone or through my smart TV. And then, of course, Paramount Plus as well. So everybody's entering into this world. And really what it's doing is it's making it more fragmented, more confusing. But when you really look at the trends in the data, it's not as confusing as we make it out to be. And you could see here, Nielsen just launched a live platform called The Gauge. And they're starting to work towards incorporating this new world of streaming into our television viewing behavior. And you could see the data that they launched this platform from in May of 2021. You could see a huge change here. Streaming has now actually overtaken broadcast in terms of daily time spent by all persons 2+. And the latest data that was just released about a couple of weeks ago from June tells a very similar story. Cable grew to about 40%, and it still holds the lion's share of television activity as it relates to how consumers engage with the television and get the content that they love. But streaming is continuing to grow. That's at 27%. And of course, it is at the, unfortunately, it's at broadcast's expense down to 23%. Not that people don't watch it, they still do, but it is becoming more fragmented. So those are the latest trends. I'm going to pause here right now, end of the first period, and open it up for any questions based on what you guys saw with device penetration in media and how we engage with that media. Perfect segue, right? Marketing strategies. I like to talk about this is the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's always rooted in base principles, but yet you need to adapt and follow trends. But there is a symmetry between the two. This I got from Forbes, and it really resonated with me because it is talking about developing simple marketing strategies, but the importance of it and how, some things, as much as things seem to change, it really doesn't change in terms of a base strategy. Obviously, every goal of a marketing strategy is ultimately to generate income. That's why we go to work, right? We don't do this for free. We don't start a business for free. We want to make money off of it. Well, how do you do that? Well, a great thing to start with is 3 basic questions to point us in that direction, right? It's first and foremost, as a business owner, what's currently contributing to the greatest amount of my top line sales? Then what's contributing to the profit margin of those sales, right? What products that I have in terms of playing a game? Is it the big ticket item, or is it more frequency of the lower ticket items that's really driving my profit margin? And then, of course, what's contributing to the sales growth velocity, meaning what segments of the existing products and services that I have as a business owner, no matter what vertical it is, right? Home improvement services, medical services, automotive, auto aftermarket, home improvement. And there's a variety of services that are out there. What we need to do is analyze what's contributing to that growth velocity of what it is that you have to sell. And then once you have that, well, the way you figure all of those questions out is by gathering data. The data is what helps you to optimize those areas. And then, of course, capitalize on it by speeding up or, that rapid or hyper growth on what is actually contributing to your top line sales, your profit margins, and that sales growth velocity that leads ultimately to generating income. And then, of course, it's important to always root yourself in sound principles to be in place. You can adapt the strategies based on the data and the trends, but those principles are crucial in developing the right type of messaging and the positioning of your brand to ensure success to consumers. Because when you think about it, what are those basic principles for success? Well, first and foremost, it's telling your story. What is your story? What is it about your business, your products, your services that you want to let people become aware of? And then, of course, it's how are you building an emotional attachment to that story directly to a consumer? because the consumer is the boss. And what do I mean by that? Well, they can fire you by spending their money somewhere else. So how are you reaching those consumers, building an emotional attachment to them and telling them your story, especially in a world that's driven by technology and change, multi-channels, multi-platforms, a variety of ways of reaching consumers on multiple screens that they own, as you just saw, and how much time we spend on multiple screens and consuming video and all of these things that we're engaged in day in and day out. And then, of course, you got to make sure you have the right scale. That's where the consultative process comes into play. It's not about just throwing money at somebody and setting a schedule. You got to make sure you have the right scale of data and interaction through consultative, meetings and strategy sessions to make sure that we're truly being agile in this world of change, in this multi-channel, multi-platform world. And most importantly, as great as algorithms are, they change. They are something that are built by thought leaders, human beings. Leveraging thought leaders is extremely important in this consultative process, right? If you're trying to look at your financial portfolio, you're probably not going to go and talk to an auto mechanic about it, right? His expertise is fixing cars. You want to go to an expert financial planner to help you plan for your financial future. It's the same way with media. Leveraging thought leaders and who know and breathe and live this stuff is extremely important because, like we said, everybody has opinions and thoughts and assumptions, but when you really look at data that's relevant to the industries that all tie in together as it relates to marketing strategies, and then of course advertising to kind of fuel that marketing, leveraging those thought leaders is extremely important part of the process in really being as successful as we can be as the world becomes more fragmented, which really does lead to the important and the role of advertising, right? We all know the definition of advertising, right? Advertising is calling attention about what it is that we have by announcing it to consumers, to the general public. It's letting them know, hey, I have a product, a service, or need. And why it's important? Well, it's to create awareness so that advertisers can create that awareness and truly tell your story, build that emotional connection about your brand to your target audience. And the way to do that, and the reason why it's important, is to provide those interested consumers a reason to consider or choose you based on your sales, your pricing, your promotions, what availability inventory wise that you have, how easy is it to do business. That's why all the other things that you do, it does involve a very strategic consultative process. You shouldn't be doing this or that. You should be doing this and that. And I learned that from my Schoolhouse Rock days of conjunction, junction, what's your function? It's called omni-channel, and we'll get into that, but things work together to ensure your success. Reputation management, SEO, SEM, these are all important parts of an overall marketing strategy, but advertising fuels the success of all of those individual tactics, especially when it comes to talking about your key performance indicators or your goals. Is it increasing foot traffic? Is it increasing traffic to your website? All the things that you're doing to help create an interest in what you offer in your market and guiding that consumer down the path to preference and purchase. And then of course, back the way when media was much simpler, yeah, it was the purchase funnel. But this purchase funnel, that shows advertisers' place, well, that's changed too, thanks to technology. Really, it's not a funnel anymore. It's more of a roadmap. And each part is equally as important. But thanks to all the different ways consumers can engage with media and all the different strategies, each part is more of a roadmap now as opposed to a narrowing funnel. And you want to make sure you're utilizing all the strategies and tactics and data to create awareness, build that story so that consumers consider you, and ultimately leading to every goal of every marketing strategy, which is spending money and purchasing with you. So that's why advertising is really important. And again, this was a study that was done called the Era of Adaption. And it talked about some of the strategies for brands of all sizes, large business owners, mid-sized, as well as small business owners of all sizes. and it does talk about basic strategies. Again, more than happy to take you through the entire presentation, but the sake of this, meeting and the timing of it, do want to talk about some of the findings, right? So first and foremost, you want to really not go dark. And again, this is just what we've learned from history. Advertisers that pull and go dark, it takes them a long time to recover. Might not be the greatest strategy because it will have negative ramifications, both short and long term, in rebuilding that brand. And then, of course, even though we understand times are challenging and we've gone through a pandemic and all these different changes has made it more difficult, well, being adaptable is critical. And being able to follow data and truly plan and be consultative to plan your strategies in the most accurate, effective, and efficient ways is extremely important, especially as change is constant, and it is a daily consideration, which leads to the next point of omnichannel, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Omnichannel means a multitude of different platforms or different media all working together. Yes, consumers use digital channels to make purchases, but they do a lot more. They play games, now they consume content, they watch short form video, long form video, and it's really important for marketers to understand how all of these different omni-channel or multi-platform, multi-screen strategies kind of work together and focus on all of those different individual touch points along the consumer journey, just rather than focusing on that point of purchase. I understand we live in an age of instant gratification. We want results right away. But sometimes you really need to grow and cultivate things and plan appropriately. We can definitely achieve those key performance indicators and goals, but having the right strategy is extremely important over the long haul for success. And of course, you want to keep your eye on the latest trends, the things that truly are, growing, connected TV and addressable. They're the new hot topics. They're the buzzwords, but yet they're still new and still growing. Like you saw on the trend charts accounts, it's growing very quickly. A quarter ago, it was 1/4 of viewing. Now it's 1/3 of viewing. And that trend will continue. And it's definitely become a main, staple of our daily diets, if you will. But we need to make sure that we're following those trends and accurately planning to reach all of your goals. And measurement is truly becoming a challenge in our industry. Again, I'm going to get into this a little bit more in the third period, but fewer than 20% of the marketers that were surveyed in this study say that they feel confident about their ability to measure data. That's because it's so fragmented and difficult, and it's confusing. And then, of course, data points you in the right direction, but you need almost like an omni-channel approach of using different screens and different platforms. You need different data sets as well. Yes, first-party deterministic data is a great start, but is it enough? Marketers really need to reassess the sources that they use and the quality of data that they have access to establish and maintain the relationships that they want to build and have with their consumers, especially with their media partners. Because again, we all know, based on what you've seen to this point, we do a lot of different things, watching TV, using social media, listening to the radio. But we are talking about advertising exposure and the different screens that people are exposed to ads, how much they trust ads, what drives consumer trust and consumer action. And you could see here, this was a study that was done by Analytic Partners in the fourth quarter of 2020. And you can see here, yes, all media definitely has an omni-channel impact, meaning both offline physical store presence and driving people to websites, online presence. These are critical components of the consumer experience. But all of these channels definitely work together. They don't compete against each other. We're not fighters, we're lovers, right? Not this or that, it's this and that, because they all provide an impact. And you can see here again, it's not like shooting the messenger. TV is the biggest driver because we spend a majority of our time watching television. And as a matter of fact, our constituents in the industry agree. This was a survey of 284 marketers and agency contacts that are involved directly in video advertising decision-making. And based on their survey and their voice, well, over 50% of people said linear TV is still the most valuable video advertising tactics used today. About 1/3 of just linear, but now thanks to technology and data, You can add elements like data-driven linear, addressable linear, or even programmatic linear with access to deterministic set-top box data to really plan and effectively target people on the television screen. And as continued connected TV and OTT digital TV streaming continues to grow, well, that now puts the television screen almost at 70% of the most valuable tactic, because streaming television, full episode player engagement, virtual MVPDs, set-top box video on demand, or programmatic OTT, all thanks to technology and evolution, growing the value and the importance of that big screen in our households. Like I mentioned before, we arrange our living rooms around our television sets and our lives around our mobile devices, but they all work together. And again, the reason why it went from 50 to almost 70%, well, because connected TV is like digital. With the advent of this technology and these smart TVs, we can now partner with these, what they call automated content recognition data sets that come directly from manufacturers like LG, Vizio, Samsung. If you have access to deterministic set-top box data, all of this level of detail and data truly allows TV viewership measurement to embark upon this great new world of change. And it's migrating away from limited samples and projections to really having larger, more reliable patterns to truly analyze viewers' behavior after exposure, to be able to track somebody using deterministic data sets that we're accustomed to seeing in digital, but now we can implement in the television experience, because streaming television doesn't require, sample-based measurement. Ads are digitally served to the household level via IP addresses, especially on connected TVs. We'll get into this in a little bit about cookies and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, cookies are going away. And the way you stream content on a connected TV, well, that's powered by the Internet Protocol number of the IP address. So as this change continues, well, it's going to be important to follow these trends and to kind of follow the leader, which kind of leads to some of the case studies in our industry. Again, I'm going to kind of go through these quickly, but just by a level of example, you can see the tech giants in our industry, right? The big five: Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. Well, they've embraced this cross-screen tactic. They spent last year during the pandemic nearly $3 billion focusing on advertising on cross-screen TV. And yes, they buy the marquee premium programs that they know people watch: sporting events, news events, fixed programming. But that's not the only thing that they bought. It was a part of their investment. You can see here on this slide, on average, those five entities advertised across 86 different television or broadcast cable networks. And the reason? To maximize scale and engage a wide range of audiences when those consumers are engaged in the content they love. We always make assumptions. I hear it all the time. Well, people only watch live news and live sports. Well, not necessarily the case. Again, taking a snapshot of live television viewing, the latest data I was able to get my hands on was from October of 2020. Well, yeah, 13% of live viewing has occurred via streaming. Another 17% is to news, and another 13% is sports. All great high profile, high value environments. But if you add all three of them together, it's 43%. 57% of people 2+ watch other things: cooking shows, flip shows, wedding shows. There's such a wide array of genres of programming out there that's why you see these entities buying wider and buying deeper for that full spectrum, I guess, or as you will. And then, of course, the case studies speak for themselves. The reason why they do it: they see increases to their web traffic. They see, based on their advertising investment on what they're promoting, viewership follows. The more they spend, the more the viewers follow. And the same thing with Amazon over 6 years. They have a significant advertising budget on cross-screen television, and it continues to drive revenue for these companies. And yes, these companies have deep pockets and significant awareness, but it's still that winning formula that these guys apply to their marketing challenges, right? Identify the need of their consumers, invest in advertising behind it, and then, of course, add the scale and immediacy of marketing elements like multi-screen TV, because that's the key to success. And it's not just your tech giants. This was another study that the VAB released this year, again, talking about $1.3 billion invested in 2020 across 283 first-time television advertisers across the country, across 95 different categories. And the results are almost exactly the same. When comparing their web traffic before television towards after multi-screen television, they've seen significant increases to their web traffic. And then, of course, the important thing to reinforce is, while planning a strong launch is definitely important, it's the sustained messaging over time that continues to keep your brand top of mind and increase that brand salience to inspire consumer action. Just to kind of pick off where we're talking about where the industry is going, we talked about, focusing on audience-based targeting, right? Getting away from traditional demographics and assumptions, but really following, buying habits, personal characteristics, different behaviors. And really what it's about is focusing on an audience. Once you identify the audience that you want to reach, there are a variety of platforms you can reach those audiences on. And really, those are the strategies and tactics that we are starting to really see that are being successful in these types of multi-screen television campaigns. First and foremost, it's all about understanding your customer and your behaviors. And really, that's where that consultative approach comes from. Because once we have a better understanding of your goals, who your consumer is, then we can really utilize all the different data sets that are out there to truly target and measure reaching those audiences across all the different platform opportunities that, thanks to technology, is now available to reach these consumers, to be able to test and learn all the different strategies that we implement and learn from and optimize. And of course, it's not about just going to the same old, right? The definition of insanity is, doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get different results. The world has changed, and buying broad and deep, that is what we're seeing that really is, generating success. And the ability to effectively target your consumer and follow their behavior across all the different screens and platforms, that truly does improve your cost efficiencies, which ultimately leads to, maximizing the return on your advertising investment that you make, and understanding the outcomes that are most important to your outcomes or objectives, right? Your key performance indicators. And then ultimately, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We need to optimize those outcomes, not just for your current buys, but hopefully for your future cross-screen, media investment to truly breed success. And we definitely understand it can be confusing. It's confusing for us. This is just a snippet of different articles in our industry that shows how much confusion is out there with data measurement, everybody claiming to be number one. Are we prepared for all the changes that are coming into play with cookies going away? They're calling it cookie apocalypse. Of course, conspiracy theories, the real reason why these companies are killing the cookie. And then, of course, most recently, is the process broken? And it does seem to, we do seem to think that both on the client side and the agency side, we feel like it is, which leads to confusion. But really, don't be confused. And that's what this consultative partnership is here for. That's why we like to educate. We like to work together. And a little bit about how we can help, right? So A4 Advertising is a part of a big corporation. We're owned by Altice USA. We have a lot of owned and operated assets like news, but it's not just news, it's content. Here in the East, we're Optimum. Out in the West and a little bit down in the Southeast, we're Suddenlink. And as a result of being part of such a big family, we were able to create A4 Advertising, which is truly a data-driven business that focuses on multi-screen ad campaigns, not television campaigns, not digital campaigns, but audience-based campaigns in any geography with the true focus, because our goal is reaching audiences on any screen in the most accurate, effective, and efficient ways in utilizing data. And data is extremely important. Let you in on a little secret. Now I'm going to show you where all the cookies went. Right now, I'm just kidding. It's not Cookie Monster. It's just the change in data. And we definitely have been working towards this change for quite some time now. As our senior vice president of product and data and operations in our company, Kevin O'Reilly, stated in an article just recently, we've been working on this approach. And yes, with all of these changes, well, these companies have to find another way to target consumers. And everybody's testing their own methodologies and their own approach to adjusting towards this loss of the cookie. And the truth of the matter is at A4, well, we've already been working with our multiple DSP partners on solutions, just like the other people are doing in the industry. But we're continuing to grow our direct relationship with these publishers and partners to be able to utilize, internet service provider partnerships to expand what we call our authenticated household approach. And really what that is a patented process that we've developed that matches the IP addresses that we serve to the home through our broadband subscription through Optimum, Suddenlink, and partnering with other internet service providers to be able to map deterministic delivery through the internet to those consumers. And then, of course, what that does is it gives us an advantage. We don't have to rely solely on cookies or that future process of trying to develop an algorithm. Our authenticated households truly do provide the core of accurate targeting for our advertisers, because our goal is to focus on audiences that are real, not based on assumptions. So when we showed you back in the beginning of this presentation, all the different devices that people own, well, there's a picture of it as at a residential address. We have access to smart TVs, mobile devices, connected TV, cable subscriber, whatever it is, all at the residential address. So the first step that we've taken as a company is focusing on privacy compliance and creating a unique household identification code that replaces all personal identifiable information. So Bill Chambers, who resides at 123 Main Street here in Aberdeen Township, New Jersey, is really now this unique household identification code. So all of the behavior at my residential address is collected and anchored to that code. My demographics, my propensities, my purchase behavior, what my political affiliation is. If I am a part of your mailing list or your CRM, where I went to your establishment and you collected my data, all of that information can be mapped blindly to those unique household identifiers, so that when I am engaging in content on any screen, whether it's through a traditional set-top box or through my mobile devices, which is powered by my internet protocol number, my smart TVs, my tablets, my computers, all of that information is anchored to that unique household identification code. The one thing about IP addresses, though, is that IP addresses change. So when your IP address changes, how are you anchoring it to that destination? Well, our friends at MaxMind, they tell us how difficult that really is. To be able to identify cellular and broadband IP addresses in very large footprints like national or regional. Well, yeah, the experts say you can do it with 77 to 79% accuracy. However, we're talking about local here. And when you start drilling down to specific towns or cities, the ability to correctly identify an IP address at that level, it cuts in half. And what we've been talking about for this presentation here is residential addresses, postal addresses. Well, the ability to correctly identify an IP address at a postal address cuts back even further. Most people are going to be wrong over 80% of the time. And that's why this is so important. What we've developed at A4 is known as a compiler. And what the compiler does is it anchors the IP address that we provide through our broadband subscription, through Optimum, through Suddenlink, and through other partnering internet service providers that give us access to over 50 million of these authenticated IP addresses that are anchored to these physical unique identification codes that gives us the ability to utilize multiple data sets, whether it's third-party data for automotive, healthcare, political propensities, or to be able to marry your lists and in a blind match to truly reach your audience, whether it's digital television, and be able to measure it and provide all of the ad solutions that really deliver, whether it's traditional TV, streaming TV, online video, online banners, mobile, all the different tactics that are available. Well, we want to focus on the audience, serve the messages on any screen through our connectivity to truly reach audiences in the most accurate, effective, and efficient ways. And again, to leave you guys with the last point, the industry is starting to recognize our value in this, in this ecosystem. You could see back in late 2019, released in early 2020, we were named in the top 10 for our data and analytic capabilities, having our latest automated technology, and truly being innovators in developing this, answer to this cookieless world way ahead of the fact before it even started. And we're at that point now where we have those capabilities. And again, we followed it up in late 2020 in being named in the top 3 of having the strongest and longest relationships, because people trust our data, because we truly understand the objectives of our clients in truly creating that consultative approach and being proactive in helping you be effective in your advertising campaigns, which leads to 2021, where once again, we were named in the top 5, whether it's having this compiler technology, which got us to #1, or being able to truly, focus on an audience-first multi-screen advertising approach or solution. And really, again, being in the top 5 of proactively helping our clients be effective with their advertising and marketing goals.